He likes to do that at 7 o'clock. And 6 o'clock for my planning commission meetings. You need to sign up? We took them already.
No, I won't.
Okay.
Oh, I guess I will. I'm
general-
not planning to speak, but
This is if you want to speak at either the public hearing.
you never know
Or
when
general.
when you might be moved.
Test, test. They working?
Say it again. Other items, this is public hearing. I'll just go ahead. Can I use your pen?
Yep.
Thanks. You never know.
Right, that's not this.
Oh.
No, you're fine.
It's 7 p.m. on Monday, November 6, 2023. I call this regular city council meeting to order. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Can you please join us in the pledge of Councilmember Slater?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Note that all council members are present tonight. The mayor is still tonight. So we'll move on to, may we have staff for Chief Hernandez, our new finance director. So we'll move on to any additions or deletions to the agenda for this council.
No.
We'll move up to our consent agenda, as being a full item of consent discussion.
Second. You need to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Check one. Now you can hear me. You can hear me now. All right. All right, we'll move on to Section 5, our citizen participation. The purpose of public comment period at this meeting is for the public to inform the council, not the audience, about their views on matters before the council. It is not intended for debate and discussion with the public. Please state your name and address for the record, and we kindly remind you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. The first one I have on the list is Ms. Jackie Strader.
Jackie Strader, 1809 13th Avenue. Wow. I am here tonight to express my concern regarding the lack of public notice and public involvement in the policy details regarding the traffic cameras. I've heard it stated that was discussed at the council retreat in March. No recording exists for those of us who are unable to attend. Also, item 2 on the retreat agenda read traffic calming, and the 2023 budget states that traffic calming is to install physical designs and other measures such as speed humps, traffic circles, and speed readers in residential neighborhoods to improve safety of motorists and pedestrians. So there would be no expectation of a camera discussion, but I read in the minutes that Novoa Global gave a presentation to council on red light and school cameras, and it states, next step, contract to council. In July, the city advertised a request for production for a Milton Automated Photo Enforcement Program with 7 camera locations listed. Submissions were due by July 31st, and the proposal stated that the contractor will use reasonable effort to install and activate camera systems for school zones no later than August 30th, 2023, and the balance of the system no later than December 1st, 2023. Milton received 2 proposals. Novoa Global was selected as the contractor. Why was a timeline in the proposal not followed? And since the timeline wasn't followed, is this even legal? Do we need to put it out for review? I couldn't find a change order or whatever they do to allow more contractors to bid. So then at the October meeting, there was no discussion regarding hard numbers, regarding cost, projected revenue, or financial benefit. I would expect at a minimum, the administration would present a financial forecast based on the 6 cameras discussed, their cost, projected revenue, staff time to review, and court time, and also data regarding the percentage of tickets that are contested, requested mitigation, or dismissed. The RFP required a revenue neutral system, but if that's all we get, I don't think it's appropriate to use city and court staff and public dollars to create a revenue stream for a private sector for-profit company. Where are the traffic studies? Why is there no transparency regarding the facts and data? Cities refer to intersection cameras as red light cameras, but how many of the citations are actually for having tires on or over a stop line, not running a red? My guess is the majority of the red light tickets are stop line violations, which is why they are not listed separately. And without them, these systems, I doubt, could be revenue neutral. How will any surplus be used? There's been no substantive discussion. Fife has a dedicated fund for theirs, and so does Edgewood. Why wasn't that presented as an option to council? I hope council will table this discussion until there is adequate public involvement and all these questions are answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strader. Next on my list, I have Mr. Paul Schneider.
Good evening. Paul Schneider, 1212 Taylor Street. This is my first meeting. Unfortunately, I just retired, or fortunately retired, so hopefully I'll make more of these. Just found out about the red light thing, stop line thing, whatever. I've had some experience with this, and usually it becomes a need versus a want, and it could be a rabbit hole with money. And just reviewing I wasn't near as prepared as Jackie was, but the amount of money that the court's going to incur, the city's going to incur, public disclosure is going to incur, and whoever's approving, putting the stamp on the violation is going to be money forward. The traffic cameras, red light cameras, is a great idea in certain circumstances if the facts or your studies back it up. If you've got your main problems are, we got 100 violators a day and we can't stop it, we don't have the manpower to put there. Obviously, the best thing to do is you put a marked car, marked police officer there, and then you take the opportunity to stop and write a ticket or don't write a ticket, whatever it is, and take that opportunity to make some type of goodwill, educate the elderly person, the young kid, or whatever it may be, to do that. But the cost involved can be bad. If there is any, I didn't read this, so if there's any talk of stop lines, that needs to be deleted or you're going to have zero help with the public. We've all been on the roads before that you can't see, and you have to roll up to the stop line, and not everybody stops. They look at left to try and get a better view of the intersection. So we all want to stop prior to the intersection or prior to the marked crosswalk, right? The stop line, if it's there, you stop at the stop line, then it takes their second stop to clear the intersection or the crosswalk. So the stop line thing, everybody's used to stopping at crosswalks and intersections before we go. If we wanted to make about safety, that's what we need to do. I just don't agree with it. The funding, if the funding is dedicated, it should be dedicated to public safety. And what I did read briefly on the website before I came here was all about public safety and proving this, proving that. If it's not dedicated to public safety, there's too many chances of shenanigans taking place where that money may go.
better lighting, better crosswalks, sidewalks, things like that. If it's going to have patrol cameras for the officers, you could use the money for that. There's all kinds of other things. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Next, we have Ms. Jacqueline Whalen.
Jacqueline Whalen, Milton, Washington. A couple of quick comments. First is, I hope in the future, the financial information in the consent agenda goes back to the old way where you really got to see where the money came from and how it was allocated. I appreciate an interest in perhaps saving paper, but it was really helpful to see how costs were drawn from many accounts and seeing how the money was flowing. Second thing, sure would appreciate it if you all were able to include in your budget for this year lapel microphones. It's just human nature. You want to face the person you're speaking to. The moment you turn away or step aside, you can't be heard. And I watch all those people on TV doing all sorts of things. They got a lapel mic on and they're always heard. So sure wish council would look into it. The upcoming agenda item for traffic camera, I'll have more comment about, but I would say it would be really nice to hear about the low-tech ways to do traffic calming before getting into such a hot topic as traffic enforcement cameras. I've, in my travels, limited as they are, I've been in cities where stop lines have a sign that says, stop here, crosswalk, stop here. It's nice and clear, low tech, and maybe that could make a dent in the violations. But more later. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Whalen. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 6 of our agenda, which is a public hearing regarding our 2024 budget revenue sources, but I'm going to turn that over to our finance director, Ms. Simpson, to go ahead and introduce this.
Hello. Okay. The 2024 preliminary budget was presented on October 16th and included the revenue projections as shown on the attachment. Per RCW 84.55.120, a public hearing is required for the current expense budget, which includes those activities primarily funded by taxes. The general fund, street fund, and criminal justice fund include activities primarily funded by taxes, and as such, fund revenue sources are subject to the public hearing requirement. This public hearing is scheduled to take public testimony on the revenue sources included, including possible increases in property tax. This is an opportunity for citizens to comment.
All righty, I will now open the public hearing at 7:15 to take public comments on the 2024 budget revenue source. If you come up to the podium, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. On the list here, the first one I have is Ms. Whalen.
Jacqueline Whalen, Milton, Washington, regarding the revenue sources. I just would appreciate a discussion later clarifying whether it's Pierce County funds, Pierce County only, or is it Pierce County and King County revenues that are being included in the documentation. It seems that we've only got paperwork from Pierce County. So just appreciate a clarification that way. Thank you.
Okay. And the next one I have, and I'm sorry, I can't read the last name, is it Christie? Yes. Oh. Okay, all right, well, thank you. All right. All right, hearing no others on that, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:16. We'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is 7A, regarding the Pierce County 2023 preliminary assessed values letter that we have in our packets. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this again over to our finance director.
Hello. I'd like to start by saying that this This item is exactly the same as the prior years as far as the methodology of how it is calculated. And so we've included the information that shows the current year and some of the information from the prior year. And basically, there is a increase from approximately $10,000 last year to approximately $15,000 this year. This first page includes the calculations, step 1 and step 2. The second page you have in your packet is the letter from Pierce County. And then the third item under this agenda item you have in your packet is the ordinance. And again, it's the same language from prior years, just updating the numbers per the new calculations.
Any discussion, council? Oh, Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Steve. Just a curious note, and I'm looking at page 17 of the document, Pierce County, and it's Pierce County values only, as has been always recognized that that's what we received. But on page 19, tax levies for, in the ordinance itself, an ordinance of the city of Milton, Pierce County, and King County, whereas Washington, establishing the regular tax levy for properties located in Pierce and King County for the year, providing for serviceability and effective date and/or for summary publication ordinance and title. That's the outline of the ordinance. Within all of this, how is it incorporated from King County? What do we know about King County? The notification, of course, all the monies, I believe, for us, transit through Pierce County. King County sends it to Pierce, and then Pierce sends it to us? Or how do we recognize the difference in the value? How do we justify that, the King County monies?
I don't know King County's involvement in this, but I can research it further and email you and the other council members what I find.
That would be welcome. But what we're seeing here is basically what we have seen every budget we've seen for the last, that I know of, 20 plus years. But it's a good question, I think, to answer, just so we know that their increases or their assessments have changed, ours have changed. With that, the assessments from Pierce County, as recognized on page 17, is shown. But if we could find out more information, and I believe they have some documentation that lets us know what the forecast is. So I don't see, at this particular time, a reason to hold this up for that, but that needs to be provided. Thank you.
Councilmember White?
I just wanted to bring up the subject as I did last year.
Mm-mm.
No.
See if Whitaker's is working. Nope. What is going on here?
Hello. There you go. As I brought up last year, I think it's inappropriate for us to take our allowed property tax increase of 1%. And I think we should bank it because of the size of our ending fund balance. According to the, according to the general fund summary of the proposed budget, we have a ending fund balance for 2023 of $4,367,534. I don't think it's appropriate for us to raise property taxes on our citizenry when we have that much surplus. We can bank this money
and use it when we need it, but we don't need to be raising people's property taxes right now. I don't know if anyone wants to have a discussion about that, but that's sort of how I feel about it. And if it stays the same, I'm going to vote against it when it comes back to us. Thank you.
Just for
Yeah.
a question for clarity, are we, the city of Milton, raising property taxes? Is that all done through Pierce County's assessment? And we get a portion of that assessment? We're not individually raising taxes on anyone with this document. It all comes from Pierce County.
Yes, the rates and the allowable amount does come from Pierce County. When I follow up to ask what is King County's involvement, if any, I can ask what is our discretion.
Okay. I was just curious on that because we don't raise the taxes. We receive the taxes as per the county's assessment value and forwarding those monies to the city of Milton. Thank you.
Councilmember.
I just wanted to comment that that is not true. In fact, the reason we have an ordinance is to increase the amount we're receiving. So according to this, we can increase our share of the property taxes from our citizenry by $15,274.82. We do not have to take that. Our citizens do not have to be charged that. And they wouldn't be unless we pass this ordinance allowing for it to happen.
Is that correct?
That's why cities have what's called banked capacity. We can bank it and be able to, in a time of need, be able to take more than the 1% if that amount is in our bank.
Correct.
So-
I think I understand that and
Yeah.
use that. But the paid monies are already paid by the taxpayer. They're sitting someplace to be banked. It doesn't
That
lower
is-
anybody's
that is-
taxes.
That is not true.
Pardon?
That is not true. We are setting the rate to be charged our citizens for their taxes to be assessed in 2024. So those have not been assessed. If we do not take this extra $15,000, it will not be assessed.
Is that correct?
I don't know for sure either way, but I can definitely look into it.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Whitaker?
Yes.
And that the 15,274.82 is spread out amongst all the citizens of Milton, correct?
Yes.
And so, that's the only point I wanted to bring up
Yeah.
too. So when you look at it that way too, it doesn't seem as large.
Right.
But still, if we could bank it, that would, if you could increase it the next time it's done, in case you need to.
Anyone else?
Councilman
Whalen?
You go. Just to add to that, there are years that we have not taken the 1%. But eventually we have received the 1%. We take it a little bit later. It's banked. It's paid for. It sits someplace. It can either sit in the county or it can sit at Milton. And this allows us to sit that money within the city of Milton. It's going to be, the assessment is going to be there. The people are going to pay for it unless we zero out next year's increase of what we're allowed to ask for, the 1%. Other than that, I believe the citizens paid. Whether we get to use it now or later, it's going to be there. It's not going to lower a tax rate. If we lower it to say we want nothing, not the 1% that we're allowed to increase by, it's still monies that are being held in Pierce County. We just don't take it. I believe that's, but go ahead.
So if that's true, then we would then refund if we chose not to use that money back to the citizens?
Mhm.
I don't think so. We can
So
say zero.
We would just bank the money?
We say zero.
Yeah.
But our particular take is 1% more every year. We could go ahead and say, no, well, we're going to take zero. But I believe that assessment is banked. It's going to be paid. It's going to sit someplace. And we're allowed to take up to 1%, of which we're looking for 0.9769%. This is always a difficult decision.
Anyone else? Again, this item is a discussion item tonight, and so it'll be coming back in the future, so an agenda item. And I think we have some questions to be answered on that. I know historically, we have been doing this quite a long time, and it is true, it's a $15,000 hit across every citizen or house tax assessment in the, and I've lived here 40 years, and I've seen that happen on big amounts and small amounts, and we've always negotiated down to this small amount like this. That's just been, with cost of living and everything else, prices go up for cities too. And my opinion as a council member is we have to make sure we are cognizant of that also, and having a minimal amount when you talk about $15,000 over a city, for me, is not a huge hit for taxpayers. I mean, so anyway. So we'll move on to Agenda 7B that we have here. And this will be on the ordinance 7523, the photo enforcement ordinance. And Chief Hernandez will provide review of this agenda bill. Followed his review, we will need a motion to open the floor for discussion. Chief Hernandez. They all say they're on.
Good evening, council. Tonight before you and distinguished guests, I have agenda item 7B. This is per the revised Code of Washington. Before the city can even consider having automated cameras, they have to have a resolution that's in compliance with RCW 4663.170. And that's what this is before you today for consideration. You've already taken a look at this, and there was some critiques, and it did go back to our legal counsel, and they made very minor changes. But other than that, it is what it is.
I would need a motion from council to further discussion. Councilman Whalen.
Thank you. I'm not actually sure everything I'm going to say after this. I move to approve ordinance 2075-23 as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Hall to move to approve ordinance 2075-23 as presented. Councilmember Whalen, do you want to speak to your motion?
Well, I will. Yes, I would. Thank you. I've looked at these areas that we're considering, and the physical placement of a car, a police officer, to try to capture the violations of the stop line and the red light. There's no place for it to go. You'll get one vision at that intersection and not the four ways that people violate the stop bars. What happens in the street, you have a stop line and you're required at a red light to stop before you cross that line or intrude upon that line. This will, if you intrude upon that when there's a red light, you'll probably get ticketed, and justifiably ticketed, because that's against the law. At a stop bar, you're required to stop. Prior to that, that's as further as you can go. Now, once you've stopped and you have a red light, you can roll and move. You're not locked in there like any other red light. You get an opportunity to turn right on red at a rate that is slower. You stop and then you start going again. What's happening, and I've witnessed this quite a ways, is that people do not stop at the stop bar. They roll up to the crosswalk, and in times they even invade the crosswalk. And then they stop again, and then they turn. There's other issues at some of the intersections we have, which is line of sight issues. And those were allowed by the city to go in place when the shopping centers were built. The line of sight is a difficult line of sight. It's also difficult to see pedestrians from the line of sight as to where they exactly are. All this is doing is enforcing the fact that if you're coming to an intersection and there's a red light, you stop before the stop bar. Now, this does not prevent you from rolling up and even making a right-hand turn, which is by law allowed in the state of Washington. So seeing that this is something that's, well, it's not to capture the money, it's to prevent injuries and issues at these intersections. School intersections, it would be the same thing with the stop. When you're coming down 19th, which is a private road, it has a stop bar, which is very seldom used. And that's for exiting when you drop your kids off to school. There's a lot of line of sight clearance, vision clearance, coming out of 19th on the Milton Way. But people ignore it. They come right out to, you might say, beyond, the sidewalk. There may not be anybody walking there, or there may be. But this is to help prevent anything occurring at a hazard in that particular area. That's the same in the four-way. When you're coming up 19th, you stop at the stop bar, which brings you back so the sidewalk is fully clear. And then you're allowed to migrate up to and make a full right-hand turn, even though there's a red light, which is legal. But you're not legal to run all the way up there and then, or continue to go and make the right-hand turn. In a lot of cases, the pedestrian doesn't make a full stop at all. They slow down, they roll into the stop bar, they continue to roll, may stop actually before you get onto Milton Way. But that's the situation you see in these intersections. And there isn't a way on any of those intersections to place an officer, say 3 hours a day, in the morning when the school is open, in the afternoon when the school is getting out, let's just say 7 to 9 o'clock in the morning at the corner of 28th. That's a difficult one because you can't see that. There's no way to secrete an officer there. You'll wind up with, if they see the cop, they won't break the law. If they don't see the cop, which you're not going to put 24-hour cops on these corners. We just can't afford to do that. And there's no way to secrete them in there. If you see a cop car, you're not going to run the red light. This is a habit. And if you look at these intersections, they're constantly violated by traffic. At 28th, because we take so much traffic now, on 28th, coming up off of Jovita with the traffic circle at Emerald and then out to 28th, people coming up Enchanted Parkway or coming down Enchanted Parkway from Federal Way use Emerald and 28th as to not get caught in a traffic light on Milton Way and Meridian. That one has a turn lane, which is a good run. Even a turn lane, you're supposed to stop at a red light and then go. Unless the traffic sign has a yellow caution arrow. If it doesn't, and you have to stop before you proceed with that. And I think this would benefit the citizens of Milton greatly in these particular high-traffic, high-density, high human traffic, because the shopping centers are taking on a lot more walk-ins than they ever had. And I think it's an appropriate thing to do in the town. I don't find a fault with it.
I have a question or follow-up question for the chief on this. The motion that we're looking at here is actually to pass an ordinance to allow us to use cameras, and that may be cameras in school zones, that may be cameras for speed zones going down any of our major arterials that are problems right now, that may be cameras on 99 for the stoplight that we know gets run quite a bit, and we've had fatalities down there and different things. And so for me, and I'm just trying to understand the purposes of when we're looking at this ordinance, this allows us to look at all those areas and put those into place. I don't want to get pinpointed on, we're just talking about stop lines, because although I have opinions about stop lines, I have strong opinions about speeding in school zones, and I have strong opinions about going 50 down to 35 in those areas. And so I want to make sure that, and maybe others can talk to this, is that we're looking now at an ordinance regarding, are we going to allow these type of things in the city, not just stop line cameras, but are we going to allow the usage of cameras in our city for other things which can be completely valuable, which we may all agree on, like a school zone? Am I correct in my thinking there?
Yes, that's correct. The RCW is very specific about what the requirements are for local jurisdictions to be able to have automated camera systems within their jurisdictions, and it very clearly lays out the legalese required, and that's what you're seeing in this ordinance is our legal advisors have gone through and they have looked at other draft ordinances, and they haven't added or subtracted anything. They've just followed the law, and part of the requirement is you have to have this ordinance on the book that clearly identifies the penalties and the fines, and also that you're following the requirement to do analysis at different locations throughout the city to identify a need, that you can't just arbitrarily and capriciously cover your entire city with cameras.
And follow up to that, then, we as a council could say, we don't want stop line cameras, but we want school zone cameras.
Correct.
Or we don't want stop line cameras, but we want speeding cameras where we know we may have a problem on Yuma, or we may have a problem somewhere else. And that's what I want to clarify, that what this ordinance is actually doing at this point, that it's not pinpointing us down that we have to put stop line cameras in or we have to do something.
Correct. Back in September, there was a study that was done that Director Madden had passed out that showed the different areas that we had surveyed. And for example, if you look at Milton Way and 28th, there is a left stop line, a straight stop line, and a turning right at 10 miles an hour, meaning they're just running the red light. So also, you can cut out stop line and just say, look, we're going to put the right at 10 miles an hour plus. But the main thing, the whole point of this is that you have to communicate in your ordinances the process, how we've identified the intersections, and what the fines or penalties can be. And then it's up to council to decide after the studies have been done where they want them, the type of enforcement, how strict you're going to be. Is it going to be they have to stop before the line, on the line? Are they allowed to stop in the crosswalk, which kind of defeats the purpose if they're stopped in the crosswalk? Or are we going to look at individuals that clearly ran through the red light at 10 miles an hour on that right turn on a red light?
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Seat.
Just a point of order. I believe Councilmember Hall had her second to speak to.
Pardon me? Oh yes, I'm sorry. I forgot about that.
So I'm not a fan of red light cameras, but I'm not a fan of if somebody runs out and hits a child, what are we going to say as council? What is our responsibility? Because I have visibly seen horrific accidents here as a police volunteer. A man came upon a car that his dad was in it and was killed. And he asked me, why did that happen? How come that happened? I couldn't answer him. And that's where my gut is, right here. I've been brushed by a truck in an intersection because he didn't see me. It just was in a big hurry. It's real. We can argue about where we want to stop or start red light cameras, or where do we want to put them in school zones. But the reason why we're doing it is for safety. And running a right turn with somebody in an intersection is a horrific accident to happen. It just is. What do we tell our families and our friends and our neighbors? We did not make the decision to do this.
Any others? Councilmember White?
I just wanted to clarify something that, that you had said with regards to speed cameras on surface streets like Yuma and any other neighborhood streets. Those are not allowed. As far as I know, the state law allows for speed cameras only in school zones and in park zones. Isn't that correct?
Speed cameras?
Speed cameras?
Yes.
Okay, so you can't address speed with cameras in any areas other than school zones and in a park zone. So I just wanted to clarify that so that you're.
So like Milton Way, Oak Street, where parks are in our city. Yeah.
Just a quick question. And I know that this is the next agenda item, but it's pertinent here as well. The last time we talked about this last month, the contract called for 12 cameras. And when that was questioned, we were told as a council that that was going to be rewritten to show 6. This current contract shows 9. And so I was wondering if you could, in order to know how to address the issue, if you could tell me where those 9 cameras are going to be placed so that.
If we could bring up.
Point of order.
Yes.
That's on the, that
That's
has
on-
to deal with the contract, not the.
Right, the
ordinance.
contract, not the
I understand
ordinance.
that, but it also has to do with the overall issue and the argument that I'm trying to make. So I'm wanting to know, one, is 9 the number?
I
Or is
believe
it
so,
6?
but we have our vendor in the audience who could answer that question, because I believe it's based on systems, and that's Public Works, and Heidi has been working on that. If you'll allow her to answer that question.
Well, I think it would be best to do it in the next agenda
Okay,
item
well,
when we're talking.
I'll just make the assumption that it's 9. And last time, you know, I brought up the arguments about the fact that that traffic studies have been done and data shows that in terms of safety, the cameras don't increase safety at intersections. I brought up the fact that I'd gone out and spoken. Who? Oh, sorry. I'm hearing myself, so I'm assuming.
Yeah, but when you move away, I did the same thing over
Okay,
there.
I'm going to hold it, so when I turn my head, it'll go with me. I knocked on doors at 87 homes, and I know it's not scientific. I wasn't push-pulling them. I simply said that the council is being asked to make a decision on whether to have automated ticketing cameras installed in the city. And I'm out taking the temperature of the community. Could you tell me whether you would be for or against them? 84% of the people said no. Most of them said hell no. 16% said yes, it would be a good idea. And as a caveat to that, most of those people were frustrated with what they considered the new normal of lawlessness. And they just thought anything we can do to clamp down on that, whether it would be effective or not, was something that they would support. I talked about every city that's run an initiative for cameras has rejected them by 60% or more. And so that is a background, and that's what I talked about last time. What I want to talk about tonight is we had our initial budget that was introduced last month. I looked in there, and we have budgeted $30,000 for traffic infraction income, which means that if you look at it from a numbers perspective, in order for $30,000 of annual traffic infraction income to come in, that's with 14 officers, they're writing 1.2 tickets per month. So what I'm suggesting based on that is that we currently do not place a priority on traffic enforcement. And to suggest that we need cameras at this point because our officers are unable to clamp down on whatever traffic violations are occurring, I think, and perhaps it's because I'm not understanding how the police department is currently working, but I do know that when I first moved into this town, there was always a police officer on Fifth Avenue, and I learned real quick that you do not speed on Fifth Avenue if you don't want to get a ticket. There was noticeable presence of police in neighborhoods, and people are noticing that that is no longer the case. So we're taking that $30,000 budget income line, and these cameras, for 9 of them, are going to end up costing $431,892 a year. Okay, which means that we're going to have that much revenue coming in just to break even.
Excuse me, point of order. Go ahead. We're discussing Milton's automated photo enforcement ordinance.
Yes.
Allowing us to go to the next issue to discuss. There's 2 different issues here. The next would be the discussion on what we could or might not do. This just allows us, this stands alone. This just allows us to go beyond.
I agree with you.
I'd like to stay with the subject matter at hand.
Okay, and the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I think that acting on this is premature. Because, well, let me ask this question to the chief. Suppose it was decided that traffic enforcement was a priority. What would be the consequence to other police duties?
Well, it's funny that you say that because I've shown pictures over and over. This is an example of what we do on a daily basis. This is a recent one here where we took $1,000 and 550 fentanyl pills, which I would argue are potential 550 overdoses that we took off the street. We took 2.45 grams of methamphetamine off the street. So this is a graveyard officer. He stays busy. And then I did run some numbers, which you can get at any time. I can provide it to council. It comes from South Sound 911. They generate these CAD reports for us to show us police activity, all activity. And it breaks it down by month. I can do it by the hour. I can do it by the officer. And when I looked at what we were doing for traffic, So far this year, we've done 15,589 traffic stops. We've done 47 DUI stops. We've done, let's see here. Disabled vehicle in the roadway, 76 vehicles. Abandoned vehicles in the roadway, 20. If we want to look at disorderly road rage, we've handled 15 incidents of that. So when I start adding them up, motor vehicle injury, non-injury, 121 vehicle accidents that were responded to. So in the end, when I start adding it up, we end up at about 2,500 vehicle contacts. So we're out doing contacts. The other thing is whether we look at it, like it or not, and I've looked at legislation and how it's changed officer behavior. I've looked at how COVID has changed officer behavior. Yes, over the years, our traffic stops have gone down, but they're starting to go back up again. I recently had one of our sergeants take the training so that everybody is radar certified, because again, the onus is on law enforcement to have certifications. You have to have affidavits. You have to have your radar devices tested every so often. But I can tell you that speed enforcement is a priority in this city. But one of the things that I've talked about, and one of the things, whether we like it or not, that cameras can do, as Councilman Whalen spoke to, is where there are geographic challenges for officers to be able to actively provide enforcement other than standing on the corner and trying to do a sting operation. But I can tell you, with all the level of activity and crime that's going on in the city of Milton, our officers spend a lot of time responding to calls. The other thing that I can tell you is the legislative mandates, what they should have done when they passed all this legislative police reform, which I'm not arguing that police reform is not needed, but they should have increased all police departments by 50%, because something that normally would have taken 10 minutes to deal with, we now take an hour to deal with, because we're supposed to use time, distancing, and shielding. The lack of resources is not an excuse. So whether you have 3 officers working and you only have 1 who's trying to handle that, the obligation is on us to put as many resources as necessary to try to contain that individual and their behavior and to protect innocent citizens from being hurt, assaulted, or from that person assaulting or hurting themselves or another officer. So again, this is one of those unfortunate things that there's good ideas in Olympia, but they don't fund those mandated legislative funding or legislative requirements back to the small jurisdictions. And so we're left with trying to handle everything. And, you know, I bought 2 motorcycles so that we could do more traffic enforcement. I have 1 officer currently that's certified, because you have to be certified to ride the motorcycle. That class is only offered so often. Trying to get officers to be interested to do that during the summer months or the appropriate weather, where they're just doing traffic emphasis. But the other thing is from the human component of being a police officer, I can tell you that the traffic stop, every officer will tell you the most dangerous thing they can do is a traffic stop, because they don't know what they're stopping an individual that might have just done a drive-by shooting, that committed murder. We just don't know. Or currently, with the current legislative laws that are in place, they can choose just not to stop. So we will continue to be aggressive and do proactive enforcement. And I'll tell you, we have a group of very aggressive young officers. They are out there, I think, more than the old officers who have now moved on and retired, because we've literally lost 70% of the police department in the last 3 years through retirement and attrition. So, but these young guys, and we get complaints and emails, and you can do public records requests on the people that, or I can provide those emails, the people that complain about certain areas that have problems, whether it's Taylor or whether it's 27th or whatever. We put that out to patrol, and these young kids go out there and they work those areas. But reality is perception. And when somebody does something in front of you, there's that old saying, where's a cop when you need him? And unfortunately, that is most people's reality. And then when they get stopped, it's usually, ain't you got anything better to do? And And so it's a catch-22. But again, this has been thematic since I've been here for the last 9.5 years with council, is they want to try to do something to deter people from using the city of Milton as a turnpike. This is not the end-all solution. This is simply a piece of a much larger puzzle to traffic calming in the city. It's creating multimodal lanes of travel for people to move around through the cities, safe corridors to our schools and parks, which council has talked about over and over again, building new sidewalks, completing sidewalks that were dead-ended, putting in signaling devices and lights like you've talked about to let people know that they're crossing. That's always amazing. If you ever see me and there's someone in the crosswalk, I put on my emergency lights to get people to stop for the pedestrians. And we've done stings. And there is traffic safety monies that come out for DUI emphasis. And every once in a while, you'll see 3 different jurisdictions in the city of Milton, and that's what we're doing. We're doing DUI emphasis because we get specific money from the state. They do fund some things, but they don't fund a lot of things. But again, we'll continue to aggressively enforce traffic laws. And the other thing is again, I can't tell officers that they have to write so many infractions because that creates a quota. What I tell my officers is I want them to go out and perform activities, meaning I want the public to know that they're out there, because part of deterrence is the visual deterrence, right? You're highly unlikely to commit a violation in front of a marked unit. At least you were 3 years ago. Now that's not the case.
Councilmember Whitaker?
I'll give it back to you. Thank you, and thank you. So is, in a nutshell, what you're saying with, if I understand correctly, what you're saying with this will help you do is help the police officers to be more effective in what they're doing, because you'll have these things taken care of, you could say the little problems, so they can still focus on the big problems? Sorry.
Yes and no. Again, it is simply a tool, and the legislative body in Olympia has scratched out in the laws to say, if you're going to do this, local jurisdictions, you can't just arbitrarily throw these cameras out there. You have to have some kind of justification. And so we identified some intersections, and in the end, it boiled down to these particular intersections where there were a high number of violations. But again, this is a fungible thing that the council can decide, we're not going to do this intersection, we're going to do that intersection. Or if you want to look at body count, you can do that at particular intersections, like down at Pack Highway and Porter. I mean, some of the council wasn't here when we had a grieving mother who comes in on the anniversary of her dead daughter every year and gets at the podium, becomes very emotional, and it's usually directed at me and council about why we haven't done something down on the Pack Highway. And she begs and pleads for us to do something down there. I haven't seen her lately, but again, this is a tool to leverage technology. There are many different ways to leverage technology, but as a society, we become more advanced. This is a tool. Like any other tool, there is always room for abuse or corruption. That's why we have a deliberative legislative body, and we're doing exactly what we should be doing, which is debating where, when, and how much.
Any other discussion? Councilman Cedar?
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. I'll chime in here. This is a situation where what I hear is the police asking us for support, and I think this is an easy one, at least at this juncture, for us to do. I think I share some of the concerns that I've heard about the specifics of the finances and how that's going to play out, the specific intersections. But as it relates to simply the implementing statute, the ordinance that we're talking about here, there is nothing in there that is offensive, legally or ethically or anything. This is simply going to give us the mechanism by which we can then decide should we and where. And, the bottom line up front, I'm going to support the should we and where as well. But, as far as this decision, the legislator has said we can do this. I think we would be making a mistake to not do it and give ourselves the tool I think even if there's a lot of disagreement about the red lights, about the stop lines, I doubt there's disagreement about people speeding on Milton Way. I've been passed on Milton Way. I've been almost hit on Milton Way trying to cross next to that park on a crosswalk with the hawk lights. Doesn't matter. People fly down that hill. People fly up the hill. And speed cameras are less controversial than red light cameras, and I think it's something that we should, absolutely be giving ourselves the tools to install those. So I certainly support this.
Councilman Whalen?
I would like to call for the question.
I would like to open it up, since it is a discussion point, to the audience, since it's an action item, too.
Because we're now spending as much time talking about the next item on our agenda than the fact that we're just allowing us to talk about the next item.
I agree.
We've clouded the circumstance. We need to do something.
Right, so I'd like to bring it back to the discussion of order of the ordinance itself about having the ability to look at this. And is there any comments from the audience? Yeah, go ahead. They're both of you are up at the same time, so.
Susan Johnson, 2307 8th Avenue. Councilmember Whalen, thank you for your comments. Chief, thank you for your clarification. And what I'd like to say, we have 2 women on the police force, don't forget. But I remember years ago, Tom Boyle, for years, tried to get the lights, the blinking lights on the sidewalks. It took forever. So now we're at another step of evolution, and it is one of public safety against the drivers in cars. The study that they brought up before showed cars were going 11 miles per hour on Milton Way, I think that was what they reported when they did the traffic study the last meeting or 2 meetings ago. And we are at a dangerous time. It's true, our officers all over pulling car stops are more dangerous than ever. And so we can't do passive stuff, and we can't just put road barriers or strips or signs. People don't read the signs. I wish the state would get rid of the right-hand turn. I mean, I think there have been times people have been running a red light to turn right to get ahead and almost hit somebody. I've seen that. And so this is important. Everything in this city requires an ordinance to even start trying to make the change. That's all this is doing right now. It's getting it on the book to say, we've got to do something. And if this next item isn't what you want, it's giving the chief and you all on council to look at a way to do it and not wait anymore. We talk about public safety. We talk about being a walkable city. Milton Way is dangerous. We are an island surrounded by sharks, and they are using our streets, and we have to protect the kids, the seniors, and all those you in between. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Strader?
Jackie Strader, 1809 13th. Probably surprise all of you that I actually support the amendment. My problem is with the implementation after that. So if you support the amendment and then open it up to like a big public meeting where people can brainstorm about all the various ways we could solve the problem, I fully support that. Open house, anyone who wants to speak, maybe nobody will come, and then it'll vindicate those of you who think we should just go ahead with it, but at least try and hear all our ideas too. Thank you.
Yes, Chris?
Christy Cedar, 1101 Emerald Street. I grew up in the town of Fircrest. The speed limit was 25 on all streets. We all went 25, and the few times we went more, we got a ticket. I think everyone should be following the speed limit. I think everyone should stop at stop signs, but I don't think the police have we've already heard, they don't have the ability to monitor everything. I think that the fear of being caught is a powerful incentive to obey the law. Laws are pretty clear. Stop lines, stop lights, speed limits.
My first meeting. Okay, so I support the.
You need to state your name.
Oh,
and-
Paul Schneider, 1212 Taylor Street.
Thank you.
I support the ordinance because I'm a big fan of school zone cameras. If they're done properly within the crosswalks, everything's done properly, it does wonders for slowing people down and everything like that. And like I say, the next point is where we can discuss what's going on, but as far as that, the school zone is a win-win for everybody. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Ms.
Jacqueline Whalen, 13th Avenue. I support the ordinance. I'm glad to see council is really looking at available tools. And I am really pleased to hear a robust discussion. Hooray. Secondly, I'm wondering why the ordinance does not include intent language about where the revenues are going to go. I would have anticipated seeing something like that in the implementation ordinance that would say net revenues would go towards public safety or something of that nature, so that it's clear. If it's in here, please correct me. I didn't see it. The other thing that I think could have helped on page 27, the whereases, which I don't skim over anymore because those are findings and conclusions. Whereas number 4 speaks of an analysis. I think it would have been really helpful to the public had they seen the analysis as a finding upon which creating this ordinance was based. I think that would have been helpful for people to see data to understand the nature of the problem. And the other thing is that the revenue was discussed at the retreat, but that information was pulled back. It would be helpful to learn more about the overall big picture. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Boyd?
I'll be short. Just for the record, I'm supportive of the speed cameras in the school zone, but I'm going to vote against this because it allows the red light cameras, and I'm wholly against those. So, thank you. Just so you know where I stand.
No more discussion? Okay, I'd like to bring it forward here. Then it's been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Hall. Move to approve ordinance 2075-23 as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Do I need to do a roll call on that? No. Okay, that'd be 6-1. All right, we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is 7C, the Nova Global Incorporated Services Agreement, and Chief Hernandez.
This is an agreement that you've seen already, and Nova Global representative is here tonight to be the subject matter expert to talk about the ins and outs of the agreement, costs, and so forth. This was going to be presented by Director Madden, but he's not able to make it tonight, so I'll yield the floor back, and you can choose to bring our person forward.
First of all, I will need a motion in a second to move forward with discussion. Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you, Mr. Peretti. Move to authorize the mayor to execute the service agreement with Novia Global, if I pronounced that correctly, hopefully, Inc., for traffic infraction detection and enforcement.
Second.
It has been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Cedar to move to authorize the mayor to execute the services agreement with Nova Global Incorporated for traffic infraction detection and enforcement. Councilmember Whalen, would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, thank you. It's taken us quite a while to get to this level of being able to speak to it, and I appreciate everybody's conversation. It is critical. It's been critical for years. The retreat we had had 100% support, as I remember it. And I've talked to people in town. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people that don't like it understand why we have to do it. Because everybody's going to make a little screw up, a misstep or so forth. But they are willing to take that on for the safety, security, health, and prosperity of the city of Milton, which if we don't do something, we're going to be sorry we didn't do something.
Councilmember Cedar?
Thanks. So I alluded to this earlier, which is that I have some concerns about the financial transparency of this. And here is how I would summarize that. What I see in what we are approving is kind of an a la carte choice. You know, this costs this much per month, this much per month. But I don't ever see a bottom line. And that is really troubling to me. I want to know, what systems are we installing? What are they going to cost? And so I think my question is, if we pass this, is the staff able to just, can the mayor just approve everything from here on out and say, well, one system is only $39.99 a month, so that's under the amount that council would ever have to approve? I don't think that would actually add out correctly, but I'm wondering what we're approving. I need to know what we're approving before I can approve anything. And I'm not going to just sign a blank check for the city to start installing cameras everywhere, even though I am at least in the top half of people in support of traffic enforcement like this. So I don't know what we're approving, and that's very troubling to me. So that's kind of my first, kind of where I'd like to jump off here, if anybody has a input on that. I know we don't have Director Madden, unfortunately, but please.
Spreadsheet. Can I see the last page? I thought I saw you had it in the packet with the photos. I think it would be interesting for you to know. My name's Heidi Traverso. I worked for this company for 6 or 7 years. Prior to that, in law enforcement. Prior to that, I worked for the Seattle Police Department for my prior career as an officer and detective. And I think it would be interesting for you to know that Milton's red light running, school zone violation, were right on par with Fife's, which I found was interesting because this seems like a bedroom community, and Fife a little more industrial. But your numbers were frighteningly similar, I think actually higher, which is not unusual at the beginning of a program. I just thought you might like to know that. The way the contract is structured is based on system type. So school zone systems are $2,999 per camera, per direction. So for a school zone that has an east-west, you'll need 2 camera systems because there's a camera that takes photographs and a video camera for every single violation. So you'll have an eastbound camera and a westbound camera. And then the red light systems are, do you have that other page? Is it on this one? I have to see the contract, but I think they are $3,999. So if you are, it's just a flat rate per system type. And so a park zone, I think, was 4,000. I don't see it. I don't have a copy of it here. But they're broken down by system type. So if you have 2 school zone cameras, they're $2,999 per month. And then past that, oh, do you have one? Thank you.
And if I may, sorry, maybe,
Yeah,
I
no,
think
go
maybe
ahead.
my question wasn't quite as precise, or I can try to be more
Oh.
precise here. Which I see that the compensation price, which is Exhibit B to the contract, page 61 of our packet. But what this doesn't specify is locations, and I think Councilmember White pointed this out, that the numbers are slightly different than what we were expecting, I think. So that's what I want to know, is the specifics. Like what are we going to get, right? So if it is 9 cameras, sounds like that's what the move is. It 9 cameras?
There's 2 school zone cameras, 1 park zone, and then you have, let me look at this. with the intersection with 28 and Milton Way is 3, because the northbound is not a viable location. And then the other is Milton and Porter, but there, I think we're only doing, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I believe there's only 3 approaches on this at this intersection as well.
Okay, so
And I
that
think-
totals 9. So when it says 9 systems in the contract, that's specifying 9 cameras. A system
Individual
is
cameras.
a camera.
Individual cameras.
Okay. And then the locations are not specifically in this contract or in the description of services. So how do we, I mean, I guess how does the city know that that's what they're getting other than the documentation?
It should be on
I mean,
Exhibit B. There should be an Exhibit B to that contract which shows pricing.
it does, but it does not show any locations.
Okay. So Director Madden had a list. I don't have that list, but they are, I know the 28 and Milton Way is 3, and I believe Milton and Porter is 3. Isn't that right? Oh, this is the updated? Okay. Right, so there's, okay, so westbound at Porter, I think what would be helpful is for those to be spelled out and listed.
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, it shouldn't be a mystery. So I have absolutely no heartache in listing all those out. There were other intersections that we studied that weren't viable, by the way, that didn't meet they were, these were concerned locations for Milton, the city of Milton, and so other locations that we studied either didn't have the violations that were perceived to be there, or they were on state highways that had jurisdiction conflict issues. So part of that intersection was shared with a neighboring jurisdiction, and so Milton could not be putting systems where it's not part of Milton. And that's on, what's the highway? Highway 99, isn't that the main Enchanted Parkway? So we did study that, but it turned out that there was some conflict with neighboring jurisdictions. So I think it would be important to, like you say, list out the exact locations and the price per location, if you like. That's not a problem. If that would be helpful.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to know, right? I just like,
Yeah.
am I off base here?
No, you're not.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with you.
I'm gonna step back for a moment. I have some more questions, but I'll step back.
I have a question because it has been brought up about $435,000 a year if we do this. Can you talk about net zero or?
Oh, why, what is cost neutral?
Yes.
You mean, okay, so cost neutral, the city of Milton pays for the services, that $2,999 and that $3,999 per system, only from revenue collected from the violations. Can never come from general fund, can never come from any other source. So from cost neutral standpoint, it can only be paid for by funds derived from the program itself. That's what makes it cost neutral. Milton is not responsible for any of the construction, installation, permitting costs. There are no costs other than officer time and your court expenses. I think that's one of the things that we grappled with, or that Chief and Dustin Madden had been grappling with, was figuring out exactly what those court costs would be with the arrangement with Puyallup. And the other thing is that the park violations are a 50% split with the state. They don't, that revenue does not just come to Milton. That legislation for park zones, schools, walk areas, hospital zones, those are all newly added. Speed camera or speed automated enforcement locations that are newly added to the legislation. But revenue from those particular sites are split 50% with the state. So trying to derive exactly how would we figure that out, we'd have to separate out those violations in the software to be able to ascertain how much to save aside for the state. And it's only your park really, is the only one that falls under that 50% share with the state. So there was some grappling with that estimation. And then having a start time of April 1st, roughly, based on construction and permitting and getting the administration of the courts to accept and approve unique violations for the city of Milton for those various violations. They take time, that takes time. Not under our control, but that's from the state.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Whitaker?
I believe it's live. Yes, it is. So you'd be willing to bring back the list of specifically which intersections we're talking about, costs related to that?
Absolutely.
Because that would help me, because I'm like, well, these could go anywhere. And you'd like to at least,
Oh, yes, there's only identified locations.
I mean,
I thought that was made clear, sorry.
I mean, if it's 9 cameras, I would like to know where those 9 cameras are going to go and the cost.
Yep, there's 2 intersections that are at, there's only 2 intersections, period. Porter and Milton, and 28 and Milton White. Those are the only 2 intersections that are under consideration by Milton, brought to me for study by Milton.
And then this also includes those school zones, yes?
And then the other 3, which are speed cameras.
Okay.
Unique.
All right. I mean, I'd still would like to see
Yeah.
that as well. So I agree that you kind of want to know what I don't like buying an unknown bag of goods,
Yeah, it's like a Verizon bill you can't read. I get it.
but
Councilmember.
Yeah, I have a question. What is the average time that it takes for an officer to review the video of the alleged violation event and codify it as a valid or invalid event for charging?
It can take about 30 seconds,
Okay, so about 2 per minute?
more or less.
Okay.
Depends on the violation.
Yeah, I took the data from this, and I assume that it will go down over time.
It will.
But I also assumed 2 per minute, 120 an hour. And at that rate, it would take 34.7 daily man-hours in order to review everything that and I did that data just from 6 cameras, not from 9. And I'm just wondering how that's going to affect public safety in general, if you're going to essentially, in order to get through all of these, it's going to take 3 officers to sit in front of the computer all day looking at these things.
Well, I talked to Chief Fisher down in Fife, and currently he personally is the one that's been reviewing their infractions. So it comes in over the weekend and it queues up, and then he reviews it Monday through Friday. And right now he's been averaging about 50 minutes to 60 minutes a day clearing the queue out when he comes in.
So how much is he getting?
Because Fife is kind of what I compare us to, probably the amount of violations and asking him of like, hey, how does this work? His assistant chief did it before him. So, there's discussion on who would do the queue clearing, because a commissioned officer has to come in and view that. There's also some conversations around limited commission. So currently I have an administrative assistant who could potentially review those as part of their job duties. But again, anytime that we do anything, we're going to have conversations with the union about what that might mean. So I don't have a cost or at this point, because we're looking sometime in '24 that this could possibly come to fruition. And discussion with Puyallup courts, they need time as well. And so we could be maybe a year away, but 6 to 8 months before this finally gets implemented. So, because all the processes have to be set up in place too. So when we clear the queue, then it loads into the administrator of the courts, and then it goes into either they paid it, they didn't pay it, is it gonna go to the judge? Is it gonna go to a payment? Because if you don't pay the infraction, it clouds your registration. So until you pay the infraction, if you've got it outstanding, you can't re-register that vehicle that has the infraction on it.
Same as parking.
So, that brings up the question, if Fife's able to do this in less than 2 hours a day, that brings into question, are these numbers accurate? And perhaps, are these violations that are shown on this, are they violations that would be triggered by the camera and have a notice or go into the queue of the officer?
I think I can answer that. So Fife is an experienced, longstanding program, and they have, the more you do it, the better you get at it. Red light violations take longer because you want to watch the video of the violation, whereas speed, you watch a speeding car, and unless you're trained at reading speed on a video, not that useful. What you see is generally you're matching the registered owner information, the speed, and you can watch the video, most do, but you get just faster and faster and faster. It also depends on your internet connection because it's an immediate queue. When you do one, you get the next, you get the next. So, and the other part is that Fife has a mature program, so these numbers will drop considerably for Milton.
Okay, because.
And all of those on there are violations that could be sent out, but this is Milton's program, and you're deciding, and you will decide how you want to, the criteria for your violations.
Okay, because with 6 cameras, I calculated out that it was going to be 4,163 events per day, and in order for one person to review all those, that would be 9 per minute.
So there's a 70% drop in violations after you announce that cameras will be in enforcement in Milton, after you make your public awareness campaigns, after the warning period goes out where people are actually, instead of getting a violation those first 30 days, are getting warning letters. So there's a considerable drop. Your commuting public and all those cut-through traffic that is really, I think, plaguing the city of Milton is going to be on notice. The signage that goes up to let all drivers know that there's photo enforcement ahead. Waze, Google Maps, everyone is going to be aware that those systems are in place. So once that happens, there's like a 70% drop. Then over the course of the year, the maturation of a program, as people become, routine commuters come through, your regular drivers, there'll be another significant drop. And that's how we arrive at those lower numbers. This is like baseline. When there's no officers around, what are drivers doing? And that's what this study shows.
Okay.
If that makes
I just
hope that
wanted,
makes sense.
I think it's significant if we're taking 1 or 2 officers off the street in order to review this, that affects public safety.
The great part about it is that you can do this online because it's secure, has a secure login. So if you have a light duty officer, people can come in early, an hour early. That time can be part of the program cost, which is taken from your revenue for the program in general. So there's a lot of ways that departments are sort of cleverly managing volume and time, except Seattle, they're overrun, but they are down 700 to 800 officers, so they can't do the violations.
Chief?
And council should fully expect, as well as the mayor, that if this program is adopted, I'm not going to just burden the police department. I'm going to come back and go, hey, I need more staff. I need whether it's an administrative person or another commissioned officer, or because it would be unfair to burden the department with having to do all this administrative stuff and not provide more staffing to be able to handle the administrative workload. Unfairly, my assistant chief might get more workload in the interim until we were able to staff it. But the point is that trying not to put the cart before the horse, we would have to feel fairly comfortable in the revenue projections. And
there would have to be some conversations regarding the budget, like we've talked about, dedicated funding and so forth. Are we going to say that this is only for traffic safety, and in that bracket, we categorize that as police, streets, safe corridors, extra lighting, and so forth, which council can do that in the budget process and just say, look, all revenue coming from this program is going to go into a special fund, and then the special fund is going to have bracketed things that can only be, that money can only be utilized for, correct, Susie? Yes. Okay. Yeah, so, yeah. Just trust me, last thing I want to do is take on more administrative work when we already have everybody up in arms over the level of criminal activity and traffic and all that kind of stuff. And that brings me to another point that I was thinking about. When you look at the cost of this program, which is essentially $431,000 per year, and when you look at the cost of a police officer at the highest grade with all of the certifications, it costs about $180,000 a year to have that person. So I'm just throwing out there, would it be a better decision rather than having these cameras, which are going to require additional personnel anyway, if we were to hire an officer whose sole job was traffic enforcement, who could not only police the intersections, but could police neighborhoods and stop signs and speeding in neighborhoods, rather than spending, over $400,000 on 2 intersections and in front of the school. Couldn't a physical officer do a better job protecting our citizens and enforcing the law than these cameras?
Well, that sounds good, but I can't have an officer on that corner 24 hours a day.
I'm not suggesting that you would.
Right, but if we hired one officer, fully burdened at $200,000 when you throw in a vehicle and benefits and their salary and so forth, an officer is not a full-time officer. You have to do a thing called the relief factor, which you have to factor in their vacation, their sick leave, their bereavement. So in the end, what looks like on paper 1.0 FTO ends up becoming 0.7 because we, again, more and more unfunded mandates of the training requirements that are put upon the police department for just alone 24-hour in-service training, CIT training. There's other trainings that are patrol procedures training. And again, one officer would be 4 days a week, and then you back them out for their vacation, all that kind of stuff. So there's an old formula out there that has been out there for a very long time, and it says if you want to cover 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you need 5 employees to be able to actually cover that. So I would love to have 5 more police officers.
It takes about 20 minutes to do a traffic stop for one violation versus doing 2, 1 every 30 seconds. It's a force multiplier for police departments. That's why everybody is going to them now. Every police department is considering this technology because they just cannot keep up with the volume of violations and traffic problems throughout their city, and they don't have the resources. Tukwila everyone's disbanded their traffic unit to be able to handle priority 1 911 dispatch calls. They just don't have the manpower, but they can have guys between calls approving violations from their computer. They can, when they come in the morning or before they go home for 30 minutes, review violations. 2 a minute? I wish I could have done that in a police car. I can't even get a guy to stop in 2 minutes sometimes.
Councilmember, well, I'd like to open it up for others if they have a discussion. Councilmember Streeter.
So we have these cameras installed, and you say the numbers go down after a certain, how much time does it take? Do you see a decrease?
You know, it really varies per jurisdiction and the roadway type. So for more residential areas, we would see a rapid drop because you're mostly dealing with in-town residents. But here in Milton, these are cut-through boulevards, arterials that are thousands and thousands of vehicles travel through there. So I would say that your drop, you know, it could be on the front half of the 6 months, the first 6 months, but I just don't have a feel for your, you know, the direct, all of the outskirts that are cutting through, like how, I just know the volumes, but I don't know, are they commuters mostly? Am I guessing that they are? I would say probably in the first 6 months, you'll see a pretty rapid drop, then it kind of plateaus.
Okay, so this council, after we get numerous complaints about complaining about the stop line, and we take that out, based on your data, are those cameras feasible to run? Will they pay for themselves?
That's the purpose, that's one of the purposes of doing the study. Look, you don't want to just pepper your city with cameras. That is the fastest way to upset your community. It's not feasible for your law enforcement guys to be able to keep up with the volume or your courts. You want to be selective about where you have problems and put the systems in at the most egregious locations.
No, I'm just saying, the locations
Yep.
that you've located, the two lights that you've located, your numbers indicate that what your major violation, and I think you said your major income on these things are the stop line violation.
I didn't say that.
You did.
He said that.
Okay. So is that true?
Well, the number one violation in this state is speed. That's the most.
No, my question is, are your red light cameras, which has the stop line violation, is that not your major contributor to these tickets? Because that seems to be the largest number on the data that you presented.
No. So it depends on your criteria. We have the program in Tacoma. They don't cite on stop line violations. They only cite if you blow the light or you don't stop while turning. If you crawl through that or if you go through without making any sort of pause, then you get a ticket. But if you stop somewhere before the light, while the light is red, but somewhere before you get into the middle of the intersection, you don't get a ticket. They still have.
And that's just based on jurisdiction, whoever their
Yes, you get to decide
discretion.
that criteria. Puyallup, if your tire touches that stop line,
Yeah.
it's a reference point, right? So you want to just use that stop line as a reference. What you don't want is cars in your crosswalk so that your pedestrians have to go into the lanes of travel to get around these cars. Or while I'm turning right and I'm looking left, I hit pedestrians in the sidewalk. So you can decide, hey, look, we don't want to do stop line violations. We just want to do straight throughs or where they don't stop.
That's kind of my question, to get back to it, is without those stop line
Oh,
violations,
these estimates are based on no stop lines.
those are
These num-
stopped, not.
These are not stop line violations. The numbers that we did are well and truly red light, ran through it, we did not count the stop line for left turn, straight through, or right turn.
So can you tell me how many violations there are on 28th and Milton Way?
In Milton Way?
Yeah, at that
Which
intersection.
which direction?
Let's say westbound.
Westbound to 3 plus 32, 35?
35 total?
35?
In one day?
Yes.
Okay,
And 16 hours is actually the amount that we did.
all right. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilman Whalen?
Kind of a side question. I'd like to go back to the schools.
Mm.
The school we have is very active in the evenings with field play and family events, soccer games and so forth. They're very well known in the region and so forth. Is there consideration for coverage during certain events? And will you be directly in contact with the Fife School District to get their calendar, or will it come from the city? About, when are they not going to be there? Because I know there's a certain time where, during the day.
Sure. So the city of Milton works the hours out with the school district. It's up to you to decide the hours that you wish to enforce your school zone violations. Generally, it's a really good idea to cover your afternoon sports activities, because if you stop it at 3:30 when the school's out and the kids have walked home, but then you still have, dozens and dozens of kids coming home after practices, that's an unprotected population now. I would say during active sports seasons, extend the hours a bit to cover those kids. What was your other question? Darn it. Oh, the calendar. Yes, absolutely. We get the school calendar, so a lot of places it's a half day on Wednesday, so the cameras go off after whatever time that half day walk home after school hour is. We follow the calendar precisely.
If the school wanted additional hours of support and so forth, that would be.
You just tell us. The school or you just tells us what hours do you want to enforce that school zone.
During school, and a lot of families run a little bit late, and they get in the turn lane, they're going to make a left-hand turn, basically, to get in. Does this camera equipment see the challenges that turn lane has?
Which location?
Pardon?
For which location? The school zone?
In the school zone, you have a straight lane, which is, and then you have a turn lane to make a left-hand turn into the school. Do the cameras watch that?
So the city of Milton has not asked us to study that intersection light, so I don't know driver behavior at that light. We would be setting our cameras to just look at speed and not necessarily what's happening with driver conduct through those lanes of travel. I don't.
Is the equipment able to, say, capture information?
It can do
for
both.
Quick study? If you wanted to say, well, there's
Yeah,
an
we
event
could-
coming up, there's going to be a lot of extra kids and family and so forth, and just to study it, to see what the ramifications are.
We can do it, yeah, we can do a study there, and let's just say that, over the course of time, other locations become a concern because there's new construction or new schools or whatever. We're happy to study without charge any other locations.
I can think of one in the city, and we'll talk about that.
And it's really, you'll see, after 6 months, 1 year, we'll show you the numbers and the drop of violations. It's really important to communicate that both to you and to your community to show the value of the program. Is it actually doing what it's intended to do? And then in conjunction with the chief, how many accidents are now occurring or not occurring at these intersections? We're required by state, the city of Milton is required by the state to provide the number of violations per location, camera location, in both directions, and also the number of collisions. It's a requirement. But I think it's beneficial for you to know that beforehand. I also think it's beneficial for you to see basically a zip code report that shows where the predominance of your violators are from. I think that's helpful.
Thanks.
There's any manner of reports that we can create for you.
Due to the time, we'll have to have a motion to continuance, but I am just going to propose as council member that I would like to make a motion to actually continue this and bring this back on the 20th of November. I'm not ready to make a motion tonight to approve it. Does that sound, so I'll go ahead and make the motion that I would like to move to continue this discussion and move this item to the 20th of November for discussion. And I think we can have discussion also in between. I appreciate some of the discussion we had about more input from community and things like that we could do, or however that could work too as we move forward. But I would like to make that motion. Sure, yeah.
Do I have to take, I think I have to take my motion off the floor. For continuance? For continuance? Because if not, I want my motion be carried over as my motion in the next
Okay,
meeting.
that would,
That'll work?
it would be a continuance.
Okay.
Yeah,
Continuance
a
accepted.
continuance. And the motions would stay the same
Good.
on that. Go ahead, Actually.
On the motion on the table to continue this discussion, some of us came prepared with several comments. As part of the motion, would we be allowed to make comments even though you are not actually at the point of taking
I believe
action?
so.
Thank you.
Open it again. When we open it again, then it.
Yes. Oh, yes, definitely, because it would be a motion at that time.
Should I bring back a new version of the contract with the sites specified in those costs, or should I wait? Or should I bring in
Well,
a document that shows that?
That definitely needs to be part of it, but I
Okay.
think you're probably going to get additional instruction
Right.
as
Okay, that's what I was
discussion
wondering.
happens amongst
Okay.
council.
Okay, I can bring a document to share with council that spells out which sites or which costs per month, if that's beneficial.
Then I'll make sure I pass along what's been said here to Director Madden so that he can adequately prepare, maybe have some diagrams or blown up pictures and the numbers and all that kind of stuff so people can get a better idea. So people in the public don't have to worry about trying to figure it out in the packet. It'll be up in front of them type thing.
And I would encourage council, if you have questions that come to you during this next week, send an email, to the chief or whatever, so we can kind of get a potpourri of all these questions and stuff, because I'm sure some of us have the same ones that we're going through, and that would be really helpful in the process as we move forward. And I also encourage community also send in questions and that, so we can make sure we get those addressed also in that. So it's been moved by Councilmember Peretti and seconded by Councilmember Cedar to continuance this section number 7.3. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried 7-0. Thank you. We will move on to item 7D, which is our recommendation. This is our discussion to move to approve Resolution 23-1964 as presented. This is the order of the council meeting that we've discussed about moving public comments up into the order of the meeting. So I'll need a motion on that. Councilor Whitaker?
Thank you. I move to approve Resolution 23-1964 as presented.
Second.
It has been moved by Councilmember Whitaker and seconded by Councilmember Whalen to move to approve Resolution 23-1964 as presented. Councilmember Whitaker, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. Just as this, it does make sense. It gives the citizens a little bit more input before the fact. We should have done this a long time ago. But then sometimes those, well, duh ideas are like that. So, yeah, I'm all for this.
Councilmember Whalen?
Citizen participation is very critical to the council. And I like the way we bring folks back or ask to be involved a little further. So the public is more involved with the council this way.
Thank you. This has also been a action item. Is there any comments from the audience? Or what?
Jacqueline Whalen, Milton, Washington. I just want to say thank you to council for considering the suggestion I made to consider moving the time slot for citizen participation. I do wish to say, I think the sign-in sheet is a barrier to the public. It's a barrier because if you get here late and your rule is you can only speak if you've signed up, those people have missed out. Sometimes there's people who may want to speak only upon hearing a citizen comment. So if and when this comes back to the retreat, it would be lovely to have a more in-depth discussion about your policies and procedures. The other thing, page 69, paragraph 4.9.c, in about the middle of the page, last line. Citizen comments made at this time are subject to the same procedure as listed in section 4.5. That is not a correct citation number. And again, I do hope there'll be a more robust discussion at another time on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councilmember Whitaker and seconded by Councilmember Whalen. It's been moved to approve Resolution 23-1946. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed 7-0. That brings us to our last agenda item here, 7E, which is the repeal of ordinance 2071-23, adoption of 2021 International Unified Code additions. Planning Manager Stallnaker will bring this forward.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. So when this was brought to you in June, they had set a state adoption date effective October 29th, 2023. In September, related to it's like a legal case out of California issued by the Ninth Court of Appeals, they pushed back the adoption of, they pushed back the effective date for the building codes for the 2021 building codes till March 15th, 2024. I apologize for not bringing this to you sooner. So in essence, what we have brought before you is a repeal of Ordinance 2071, and it reenacts the 2018 codes with amendments to make sure that we are still in line with state law. Once this state officially adopts, and hopefully doesn't change them again, we will bring the 2021 back towards you. What legal counsel has advised is that we do it as a public emergency ordinance, which means it would take effect immediately, since technically we are past the October 29th, 2023 date, which simply means we need a majority plus one of the entire council membership. Because it is also an ordinance, we are requesting council to move to suspend council rules requiring 2 readings. So that would be basically an action 1, and then action 2 would be moved to approve the ordinance 2078-23, repealing ordinance 2071-23. I will say that as a staff, we are still reviewing as the 2018, and Code Publishing was aware of the change, and so we have not published the incorrect code. So as far as the public knows, we are still in compliance. This will just correct it for our ordinance so that we are legally matching what we're supposed to be.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I believe this can be combined into one motion. So I move to suspend council rules requiring 2 readings of an ordinance, to wit, the approval of ordinance 2078-23, repealing ordinance 2071-23.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Councilmember Whitaker to move to suspend council rules requiring 2 readings of an ordinance and to approve ordinance 2078-23, repealing ordinance 2071-23. Councilmember Cedar, would you like to speak to your motion?
You know, just briefly, because I understand what's happening here, which is, and I want to make sure I do, because it's weird, right? But that case out of the Ninth Circuit effectively banned the use of, or it allowed cities to ban the use of natural gas. And so it's a huge upset to building codes, and so we don't know what's going to happen. And so they are not ready to pass the code, if I'm correct here. And so we're just basically re-implementing the code that already exists, which is the 2018 code with amendments.
Yes, so we're basically, yes, we're kind of backtracking, and the State Building Code Council then has kind of opened up their discussions again to make sure that, related to this case, that they, make sure our code's in alignment, the state's code in alignment, and then it'll come back to all the cities to readopt.
Yeah, and I mean, presumably that case is going to go to the Supreme Court, so I would expect that a year from now we'll also be, or sometime in the summer, we'll also be approving further amendments to the 2018 code or something. Have you talked about that at all?
No,
Okay.
yeah, we'll see.
Just- yeah.
And I mean, at this rate, the next round is 2024 codes, which is next year. So at this point, we may just skip 2021, but we'll see.
Okay, Great, thank you so much.
Councilmember Whitaker?
Thank you. I thought of this when I read it, that it's almost like a housekeeping of sorts. I mean, it makes total sense that you would, because when we're out of compliance, well, of course, when the state laws, what code is what supersedes the city. So it's just to get us so we're in conjunction with the state, and then when it changes back, we can change back with it.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, it was kind of confusing, but then not. So after reading through it a couple times, went, yeah, I'm for that.
Any other discussion? This is an action item. Anything from the audience? Okay, it has been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Councilmember Whitaker to move to suspend council rules requiring 2 readings of an ordinance and improve ordinance 2078-23, repealing ordinance 2071-23. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed 7-0.
Thank you.
All right, council reports. Councilmember Whitaker.
Thank you. So soon? Are we there so soon? That was to lighten up the mood. I do like I miss the really robust discussions. I like that, and everybody feels free to, share their opinions and also ask those difficult questions. So I appreciate it. That's what being on city council, that's what makes it so fun, is that you actually are in discussion, really making moves that make a difference. And then, so we get out of that one into, everybody knows what tomorrow is. So if you haven't yet, but you probably already have, so everybody vote. That's what it's there for, so everybody can have their voice. So, and good luck to the unopposed, Mr. Cedar and Ms. Hall and Mr. Whalen, and because you were unopposed, so congratulations. I'm good. I'm done.
Councilmember White.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything, but I will offer my congratulations to your win on your election tomorrow. I've already called the Psychic Friends Network, and they have let me know that all 3 of you have won. So congratulations.
So they've called the race. Oh, okay. I don't have anything to add at this time. Councilmember Cedar.
Thanks. I just want to note briefly, Halloween was great. There was a huge contingent of Milton residents out, which was wonderful to see. There was the years where we didn't have that when my children were very young or before we had children. And I feel like the city has really come alive. It was great to see everybody out. And it sure emphasized our need for traffic calming because we had cars swerving toward our group, honking at us, and someone burned out next to us when the parents tried to wave them to slow down. So it all comes together. But it was still a great event, and thank you for the election good wishes and good information.
Councilmember.
Nothing at this time.
Councilmember Hall.
Trunk or treat with the city was fun. Christy, your mom came and she was Scooby-Doo, and it was a big hit. Thank you, Grocery Outlet, for having great candy at great price. They're such a vital part of our community now. And I visited the new Edgewood Fire Station on Saturday, so that was very interesting.
Councilmember Whalen.
If we do anything to the microphones, can we get lapel microphones? You can see the difference. I'm sitting here, I can hear much better, but I can also hear faults in microphones, just being away a little bit sometimes. It happens. Nobody likes to sit and stare and walk around with this. It's better and better every time you do it. But they have some defects. So if anything can be done, that'd be appreciated. And just a comment, the check register, easy to read. It's a little bit of a different look from the last time, but it's nice to see a little change in it. Thank you. That's all.
Chief.
just give you the highlights. This was in a car on Halloween night. So our drug dog came for trunk or treat and was having a good time. And then when you talk about people and driving, this came out of a car with a driver. And then on Monday, we had a road rage where a gentleman decided to drive up next to a car on the Pack Highway and shoot at the car 5 times, hit the car. And through some very good police work, we were able to locate the vehicle in Federal Way as it fled up Fife Heights. We got the vehicle, did a search warrant, and we have a suspect. That's the good news on that. And we are currently looking for that individual. So if he's listening, we will catch you. The other thing is, I don't know if you're aware of it, Edgewood a couple of weeks ago had a takeover armed robbery at 7-Eleven with 3 juveniles, guns, and one holding the person and grabbing all the stuff that juveniles grab. And we were able to assist Edgewood on Friday into taking in one of the juveniles who was turning himself in. And the unfortunate thing is he was in handcuffs for about 2 minutes before our juvenile hall decided they wouldn't take him. So again, this just communicates to our juvenile population that you can do whatever you want. Here is a person that clearly is violent, had a firearm. The Edgewood officer who came asked for us to back them up to take him into custody because they were afraid as an armed police officer because he knew the details of the robbery at 7-Eleven. And so again, this is just one of those things, and you've seen the petitions out there circulating to try to give parental rights back. The parents were dismayed because they had brought their child to try to turn him in to only have him turned away by the police to take back home when they have a kid who's out of control. So again, support the new legislation that is going to be proposed. Go down to Olympia on your days that you have the councilman and you get some face time with your legislators. Tell the mayor, talk about it at your other regional meetings about how something has to be done to try to curb. And the only thing, unfortunately, it's going to get worse before it gets better because it's still continuing to get worse. So keep your head on a swivel. Oh, and I was able to catch a burglar in his home who was being held by gunpoint and with one of our new officers because we had 3 of us. One officer was up at Planet Fitness taking, someone had watched someone put their stuff into the locker, convinced the staff that that was their locker. And so he was up at Planet Fitness, so it was just me and this new officer. And we were able to run in there and catch this individual who had fentanyl in his pocket and methamphetamine. And so that's the highlight. That's the one bright thing is we got one. So he did go to jail.
Thank you, Chief. Director Simpson, anything? Nothing?
Just real quick, the permit tech position is open again, so just letting people know, it'll be, probably on the website, hopefully later this week. But yeah, so we'll be rehiring for the permit tech. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to talk to them and explain what it is. It is a great kind of entry-level type position that gets you into city government and planning, so.
All right. Well, seeing that all agenda items have been concluded, I adjourn this meeting at 9:05 p.m.